Today we're going to talk about for just a few minutes here revenue versus profits and avoiding the costly trap. So there's one thing I'm going to talk about, but I want to take a step back here a little bit, and I want each of you to really take another look at your business. And I don't want the simplicity, because I can get into super details on the P&L. As a matter of fact, if your coach does a great job with it, but anytime you want me to jump in and have a discussion with you on your P&L, I don't mind doing the details with you. Just get a laser call, a 20-minute call set up with me, and I'd love to meet with you and talk about your business and the P&L. But here I wanna really take a look at our business from 30,000 foot view. And how do I look at my business? And I believe that the number one purpose of your business, now this is my perspective here, the number one purpose of your business is to serve you, the business owner. Now, if you don't serve your customers or you don't serve your employees well, then the business won't serve you. It's very important for you to look at what our coaches are designed to do is, and their purpose and their goal is to convert the business into something that better serves you in the unique way you want it to serve you. And sure, it's there to provide finances to support your current needs, your family needs, and the business growth, and even putting aside money for retirements, all that financial stuff. But I believe that your business is also can be a place of great joy and fulfillment. Um, this is the vehicle you create positive experiences with your customers, even with your employees. Um, for people of faith, it's even a stage where, and this is my own personal viewpoint, but this is a stage where you get to co-create with God to serve others. And so let's make sure the business is serving you in the way that you want it to serve. Give it some time, give your coach some time, but that's what we're really going towards, is really moving that. And profitability is essential. Without reasonable profits, your business cannot serve you, your employees, or your customers. And so it's really important that we take a look at the profits, as basic as that. Well, of course, we're looking at the profits, but just hang with me just as I cover this. I have a dear rabbi friend that he said something that kind of shook my world. He said, not making a profit is immoral. Not making a profit is immoral. Why is it immoral? That's like heavy duty. Well, if you can't support your customers that come to rely on your business, if your employees can't rely on your business to continue, they're not going to be able to support their families. There's a lot riding on this business here for you to make consistent and predictable profits. And so without consistent profits, your business becomes a source of stress and frustration. You can get this feeling like you're losing and not really winning. And that shows up, and even you come home from work and you kick your dog. It's just like, why? You're frustrated, And so we want to make sure that this business is a place of joy and fulfillment, and it really is serving you. So with that framework, I want to dive into the specifics of the difference between being driven by revenue versus being intentional with profits. And so Nicole may have wanted me to go way down deep into some of the details of the P&L, but I'm going to stay at a conceptual or visionary level just to really hit home the importance of this, so that we can dive into the details with a little bit more intensity, and we can work with the coaches on that. So the revenue trap that we fall prey to is we get driven by revenue. It means closing the deal even if it's not profitable. Yeah, but I got to keep my guys busy. Have you ever said that? got to keep, I don't want to lose my best guys. And so what we're doing is when we're driven by revenue and we're not really looking at the profits to make sure it really works for the customer and for us, is what we're doing is we're really playing not to lose rather than playing to win. It's a huge, huge difference here. Playing not to lose. I was just talking to a guy at church last night, and he came in and we had a consulting session, and he was wanting to go from 1 million to 1.2 million, 20% growth. And so I brought him through some capacity concepts and kind of what is the capacity and what's the bottlenecks in the business. And I said, well, you don't really have any capacity issues. You can scale up. Why don't you go for 100% growth instead of 20% growth? You're playing not to lose. And we just blew the lid off his thinking on that. And he just told me, he said they just passed not 2 million, but they just passed the $3 million level on their way to 5 million, very profitable. And so it's very important to play to win rather than playing not to lose. And when you're getting into this driven by revenue, you end up selling for the second best. You begin to gather clients that are not really people you want to hang out with. They're more pain than they're worth. As much as Jesus loves them, you don't, and I don't. So they're a pain to maintain. So, and what happens when you're driven by revenue and you're just saying yes just to close the deal? It's like your sales and your negotiating skills fall to zero. There's no business, or just order taking, and you become a victim of your business. And so I want to share with you a really important concept. And if you can write this on a little index card and tape it to your steering wheel, and that's this, that business management is emotional management. Business management, business success is really emotional success. There's this concept called FOMO, fear of missing out. It leads to bad decisions in stressful times. That's when we're driven by the revenue. And I had a contractor, he's also a land developer up in Indiana. As a matter of fact, in the early days, I flew up there and spent several days with he and his team. And they were generating millions of dollars, but they were cash poor. And I found out the problem here, he was driven by FOMO. And if he didn't buy a parcel of land, or he didn't close that construction deal, no matter what profit or no profits there, he felt like he was losing until he got to a point where he almost had to declare bankruptcy. It was a very tough time. I worked with him for several months in getting the discipline of moving towards it and being intentional with profits and not driven with revenue. And he came out of it. He's a multi-millionaire guy, a very, very successful guy, but he got caught with that. So it's important here that your coaches have worked with you on profit first. And I like Nicole, I was asking her, okay, what are some things you've talked to the clients about? And Travis and Bryce all gave me some great feedback here. But here's a profit first key. It says no amount of revenue is going to solve a profitability problem. And if you have a profitability problem, your business is in trouble. It'll never serve you. You'll never get to a point where it really gets you. It's a vehicle that gets you to the place of your dreams. And so that's super, super important. So we want to focus on intentional growth, which is focused on making a reasonable profit on every job, every contract, every aspect of it. So I'm just going to take a few minutes just to cover I don't know if this thing is stuck here or what. There you go. I want to just cover some best practices on just making sure that we're dialing in to make sure every job and every contract is at a profit. So the first thing here is estimating. Make sure that all three components are included. You got your cost of goods sold, which is your material, your labor. And this is your employees, but also subs. And also your direct costs, renting equipment or having to buy new ladders or whatever it may be. You get these runaway costs that you don't include in there, but oh, well, gosh, we need this on the job, and you're not tracking for that. And that's when the profits will run away from the whole job here. And you're left doing a whole lot of work, going into a whole lot of stress needlessly. So really make sure you get a solid deal on COGS. Your COGS should be no more than 70% of your job, and as much as you can make it 60% or even below that. For you guys in restoration work, we can get even below that, the better. So, and then we have the overhead. This is where we really miss it, folks, is we don't include all of our costs. And as simple as I'm sharing with you, your coaches have already shared this with you, but you got to make sure that whoever's working on that job from the home office, your project manager, or even yourself, include your salaries. Whatever salaries are not directly involved in the cost of sales, you got to make sure that's included in the overhead, your insurance, your rent, all the other expenses have got to be covered. And then we add in that third component, we add in the profits, and we recommend 20%. So we've got very specific training on this. Ask your coach, they can send you some PowerPoints or the links to the training on that. We've covered this numerous times. And so make sure you work with your coach on that to really get into the detail on that if you need to. So. And if you got questions or comments or, it doesn't apply to me or whatever, we're going to address that in just a few moments here. Pricing, are your prices adjusting for inflation? Are you bragging that you're the cheapest guy out there? You'll beat all your competitors. Well, that's great, but if you're a half-assed worker that, a half-assed company that does okay work, that's okay. But so many of you are premium providers. You go the extra mile. I was working with a construction company here in town, and we just kind of redid their marketing, just taking a look at their marketing, and just to get that fine tune, and they want to go the extra mile. It's coming out of their heart.
Nice.
And so we adjusted their pricing to make sure we cover all that extra premium service they want to provide to people. So are your prices, are you charging the proper prices? And so many times your coach can really help you out with that. Just let's revisit that every 3 or 4 months or 6 months and just make sure you're on the right pricing. Make sure you're offering 3 options, the good, better, best. Studies show that most people, you can call it, the ghetto, you at least care a little bit about yourself. And the third one is you want to spoil yourself. Just however you want to name them, most people just pick the middle one and make sure you're getting lined up with that. We can work with you on that too. Cash flow is so important to keep the cash ahead of the work. I mean, this is why it's so important that if it's a big job, now, if you're a service company and you're in and out, you got techs and plumbing, electrical or whatever, they're in and out for the $300 or $500, $800, that doesn't really apply to that as much. You get paid right there. You don't want to have receivables on your books. But on the larger jobs, you want to make sure you got an exact cash collection draw schedule. It's in black and white, really clear. And then you go over it with your client, and then you keep on it. I'm just managing too many things. And I just will hire somebody, even if it's part-time, hire somebody just to look at that and make sure that that cash collection thing is, the invoices are going out, and the job progress is, you don't fall behind on that, because it's hard to get behind and then collect on that. Equally important, and there's so many clients I've worked with this on the change orders. Don't make changes unless it's well defined and signed off. I was working with a client years ago, and we grew him from a $10 million a year business to now he's well over $150 million a year. They remodel apartments in California. And he got in trouble with this. His change orders were like, instead of $10,000 or $15,000, they were like 600 and 800,000, $1 million change orders. And at the end of the job, they're like, "Hey, yeah, you owe us another $600,000." Like, we never signed off. They hadn't, you know. You just, whoever's on the job, the client said, "Well, could you just do this?" Bing, 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 bing. That's a change order. A change order has an exact process. Try to minimize the steps in the change order, but follow each of the steps and make sure that it's well defined, that you understand, the client understands, you guys are both on the same page. Here's what we're going to do, and it's been signed off on for this extra fee. He'd get done with his jobs, and he'd have to fight for even getting half of it back. If it's a $600,000 change order, I mean, he's lost $300,000 profits. That's like, that's a whole day's worth of work for some of you big shots. So, and then rate your jobs, rate your customers, promote your most profitable work, and say no to the least profitable. I was working with a guy in Missouri, and he had grown to an $18 million a year business. And we took a really close look. He's like, "Gosh, I'm getting up at 3:30 and I'm working till 9 o'clock. There's no end to it. I'm making good money, but this business owns me. I don't own it." And so we really took a look at every job, and we looked at the characteristics of what makes a profitable job. And we literally, over the next year, we literally got rid of half the jobs. We brought his business down from $18 million a year down to $9 million a year. He had less stress, less risk. He was happier. He had a joy coming back. He had time for his family, and his profits actually increased by almost 50%. So it's like, yeah, but how can you say no to somebody who's feeding you if they're not giving you a profitable job? You really gotta, your coach can really help you with that. That's its own process. And then job costing, tracking the revenues and expenses on a per job basis. Now, sometimes it's like, some of you guys are just getting started, but some of you guys, it's a little bit costly. It takes a little bit of a hassle. You get somebody to do that. But really tracking the revenues and expenses. I work with a barn building company, and when we started doing that, we went from actually almost losing money to him getting towards that 20% profit. And he had about a $3 million business, and so it really, really made a huge difference for that. So I hope those things are good reminders for you. Hopefully none of this is brand new that you haven't thought about it, but it's there to really get you thinking about how do I get this business really working for me. And let's stop the sharing and move over here. So those are just some thoughts. I hope it got you going on thinking about your own business. Does anybody have any comments or questions or specific applications where this made sense or it doesn't make sense for you, just let's open it up here. Nicole, I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure how you do
see,
this.
Jordan, you've got your hand up here. If you want to unmute, what question do you got?
No, I'm going to handle everybody but Jordan. You're going to answer Jordan, okay? Jordan, how you doing? Good to see you, my friend.
I'm doing well, and I see you too. Okay, so for like the allocating overhead to the estimates, so like for example, last year we did 900. Oh, where is it? 987 jobs. So, I mean, like, how do I know what percentage of the over? Do I just take it as like a baseline percentage off of like a P&L
Yeah.
sheet, or like what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, there, you can do a bird's eye view. We have usually the overhead is anywhere from 5 to 15% in my experience. Now the coaches may have a different range on that, but you can do this here, Jordan. You can say, look, I generated, how much was your revenue? Is that okay if I ask you how much your revenue was for those 987 jobs?
1.6 million.
Kicking A, Jordan, is happening, man. This is so cool. I remember you sitting right in my office here and talking about your vision, and I think you were just at about 1.2, so it's good. So you take your 1.6 million and you say, look, here's how much my overhead is, which is basically all your operating expenses. Okay. And let's say it's $200,000. And so you just divide that into, it was $200,000 into 1.6. So it's 1/8. That's about 12.5% or something like that. I don't know if my math is right.
Perfect.
This was 445. 445.
Okay. Okay. So, that's about 25%. So we're, we need to visit with your coach on that and figure out some ways of bringing that down. But so you basically say, okay, well, if this is, the revenue, I'm going to add 25% as the overhead, as a percentage. Now, 25% as an overhead, I don't know, Bryce, Nicole, and Travis, it seems higher in my mind. I don't know where you guys are at with that.
Usually 20% is the highest that we like to see. We want to get it underneath that 20%.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you get paid what you're worth, but you want to make sure you don't. You want to make sure you don't price yourself out of the market. I'm sticking to my. I remember talking to this one gal, and I'm sticking to my prices, and boy, her business was empty, and she had all kinds of time on her hands. I said, "How's kind of a Dr. Phil? How's that working for you?" And it's so. Is that helpful, Jordan, or all you guys? Is you can take a broad swath and say, here's my annual revenues last year. Here was the operating expenses as a percentage of that. Boom. That's the amount. That's the percentage of each job. Any other questions or comments or anything that stood out to you that we talked about?
Jordan,
I think that was kind of answered in my question. I was just asking about rent because my everything is based out of my house, and my office is in my house and stuff. I was like, I don't know. I've never thought about including that into bidding my jobs. I just kind of had a question about that.
How would you handle that? One of you coaches, how would you guys handle that?
Yeah, well, just to clarify, Charles, are you sounded like you were saying you just haven't considered adding overhead, or are you saying rent specifically? You're not sure where it should go?
Yeah, I guess I haven't really, I've never thought of that when I'm bidding jobs. So for my overhead, like the cost of like my home, I have that comes out of from when I pay insurance every year. That's a part of it, but I mean for my
Okay.
taxes is a part of it. But guess I've never thought about that into my jobs. I guess that's something I need to learn.
Yeah, the document that Nicole put in the chat there, the understanding what overhead is, will be really helpful and going through that. And of course, you can go through that with your coach too, of looking through your P&L. But another way of framing that same thing, where it's your cost of goods sold versus your overhead costs, is you got your direct costs and your indirect costs or your fixed costs. So the both need to be there. It's all part of your business functioning. Your personal rent, depending on how your business is structured, may not be a part of that unless it's used, because that can get kind of into the tax stuff. But maybe you count a portion of what your rent is, just like you do for your taxes, a portion of what your house value is as part of the overhead expenses in your business. And then it's the same thing that Tim said before, where you take that gross number divided by your total revenue to find that percentage that you work with. But it's more about knowing what things off of your P&L are and are not overhead expenses, and making sure that what is not overhead expenses is put directly into the job. Any direct labor, like contractors, carpenters, stuff like that, your time whenever you're bidding directly on that project or project managing for that project, depending on what phase of the business you're in, that goes up in the cost of goods sold. It wouldn't be part of that overhead percentage, but a salary that you take, regardless of whether or not you have business, that would be included in that overhead percentage.
Yeah.
So
And
it's knowing which things to put.
Charles, if you want to do a rough and dirty and to add that in there, let's say you're paying $2,000 a month for your mortgage, and let's say all the other property tax and insurance and all that, that's another $1,000. That's $3,000 in a month, $36,000 in a year. And you say that I've got $1 million company. Then you may add add another 2 or 3%. Now that's the full amount. Maybe use half the house, and so you cut that in half. It's just, this is not like a formula where you have to follow it, particularly when you're office out of your home. Office out of your home is convenient, and it does save you some money. And as long as you're not pricing yourself out of the market with a client, if you want to add that in there, it's just up to you. So, but any other questions or comments or things that stood out to you?
Mr. Edge Electric, you got your hand up there, sir.
Yes. So this may be something me and Travis need to dive into when we do our coaching session. But when factoring overheads into like building an estimate, like currently, we kind of have it figured into our hourly charge out rate per guy, as well as profit. So my mom used to she was an office manager for a roofing company, and whenever they built an estimate, they would do all the line items, all the costs would accumulate, and then at the bottom would be a separate line item for profit, and then there'd be a separate line item for overheads, and it would all calculate at the end what the needed to be to where the job was, no matter what, it was all factored in. So I'm just curious, from an estimating standpoint, the best way to get that factored in. Now, doing large commercial contracts, they just want a lump sum. So that's easy. They don't look at your line items. They don't care. They just want to know what it's going to cost. But doing more like residential service work or any other type of service work where customers want to see, line by line what the costs are, is it best to have it factored into an hourly charge out rate per guy, or accumulate the costs and add it at the end? That's kind of a broad question, I know, but I'm just curious what's worked for everybody and setting up their estimates and getting their overheads covered as well as their profits.
Yeah, that's more unusual. It seems more complicated, but if you guys have that as an established practice, And then it's always like you're estimating, then you go forward, so that's, at the beginning of the job, then you finish the job, but also finish the job and then work backwards. Are all these numbers true? Did it give me the predictable profit that I anticipated? And that's proof is in the pudding. One of your number one ways of key performance indicators is your profit, particularly profit per job, if you can figure that out. And so, teach his own.
Ed, I don't know. Ed, what's your first name? I'm sorry. I don't want to call you Ed.
Tyler.
Tyler, Tyler, are you asking like, hey, will we come up with our pricing for service work, which a lot of our clients are service, plumbers, HVAC, electrical. How do I kind of hide, or how do I have that overhead into my pricing? Is it that I do an hourly rate for each one of my guys and the overhead's covered in that?
Yes,
Or
that's
do
what I'm
I just
asking.
put the margin on top of the end?
That's what I'm asking, because
Okay.
you can't put a line item for overheads and profits in your, people don't want to, they see that, they're going to say, I ain't paying you to do this job. You're crazy. But,
Well,
I'm asking the population, I guess.
Yeah.
And it may not be the same for everybody, but, right now we have a set hourly rate that we kind of come up with previous coaching. And, it kind of hides our overheads and has a certain amount of profit. And then, on our materials, we add markup to our materials. But I don't know if we're leaving anything on the table.
Right.
I just feel like we're paying the bills every
Yeah.
month.
Well, I think that's something that when your coach looks at your profit and loss,
Yeah.
they'll be able to tell you like, hey, if what your margin is or markup on the job is enough to cover that overhead. But I would also, Jordan, I was kind of hoping you would raise your hand. Do you have feedback with him? I know you primarily do service, on how you include that overhead into your pricing. You're muted.
Do you do remodel or service or new construction?
Well, we're 4.5 years in, so right now we're kind of still growing our brand, I guess you could say. So we do everything. So we can, change out receptacles to wiring a power plant. Doesn't matter. We quote it all. Where we live, it's pretty rural, so we have to be available for all of it. We try to focus for large scale commercial and industrial facility, maintenance and construction, but we do have to run a service department as well, because that's just kind of how we, it's kind of hard to answer because we do everything electrically.
So like a big push that I'm having right now in my company is trying to get that like gross margin tracked per job. And it's hard because you have to be able to account for the materials used on the job. So like that's what we're working on right now. But I've found that whenever we're using time and material pricing, that we usually lose out on the job. So we basically do everything as like a flat rate pricing. So like every task has we've got like 20 amp outlet up to 10 feet, up to 25 feet, up to 50 feet, right? And then so like those are flat rate costs that get added in. And the idea is, that you're going to have a 50% margin on any of those individual tasks with labor and material, which hopefully then that 50% is going to cover your overhead and profit and, everything else that's required for the company to run.
Right. Okay.
That definitely should. If it doesn't, we got bigger problems that we need to get into.
What I found though is like whenever we do a time and material job, we're usually leaving money on the table.
Yeah, there's the true labor rate, which you find with the payroll specific overhead costs. And then there's still your overhead that goes separately. At minimum, you validate your pricing by actually calculating it according to the percentages and the real stuff we're talking about. But you can make a flat rate pricing system, which is also what we would generally advocate for the broad scope, like on the service side. But that's not going to apply whenever you have those bigger estimates that you're running. In which case, then, we would say, find your true labor rate And then still it would be the same. Have your overhead percentage figured from your profit and loss statement and include that as well.
Yeah, so the true labor rate is the actual cost of labor for predicting,
Correct.
like what the guys.
Because that is going to vary with the time that they actually spend.
It's
Right.
probably their payroll rate plus like 20% to cover payroll taxes and insurance and stuff like that.
It does end up being around that, but we can help you calculate that too, for sure.
Dalen,
Yeah.
I see your hand up.
So before I knew what the difference between overhead and cost of goods sold, I equated them together. Pretty much any expense the business had in my brain said it was overhead. So as I was sitting down starting my business, looking for hourly rate, I projected 2 plumbers, but when it was just me in a truck, I projected expenses of 2 plumbers, me and my wife on payroll. I took all of that. I took average parts expense to a company of that scale. I have a lot of people in the industry that were able to help me with that. To get true labor rate is a very time consuming process. And I've got a very confusing chart that helped me with it, where you just lay out every single expense and then do a little division on it to find what it costs to run your business per hour on an 8-hour day. And that was the dummy version. Nicole has helped me kind of get a better grip on looking into numbers, and I'm starting to dive into the profit first thing, which is also somewhat helping a little over my head. But what's it cost to run your business? That's what you need to know to be able to get that labor rate and feel comfortable with it. Because I heard you say you're just paying bills, and that's a scary place to be. I went in initially charging what the big guys with 5 and 6 trucks had, because I didn't want to go up when I got to that point. I wanted to already be there. So that put a big buffer into our capital, and we could stop work today and pay bills for 2 years because of our margins. They're right, and they've been right since day one. Now we will have to raise as we get higher, and of course with the economy, but on that number, and I don't know if this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but do some investigating, calling to other contractors and just see what people around town are charging. I did that for cameras. I'm in plumbing services, and we do kind of similar to you, as we'll go unstop a drain, and we'll also go run 6-inch schedule 80 in an industrial complex. So with that, the bigger jobs, as they were saying, you price on a man hour, and I mark up everything. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. I haven't been corrected yet, and we typically win a lot of jobs, but I mark up labor rate. I get my labor rate and I put it all on paper, and then I'll mark my labor rate up, my materials, and then put that buffer time in there for the guys sitting there scrolling Facebook, or what could go wrong on the job. Cover yourself. I think that's the biggest thing that I had to learn up front, is I took some losses to begin because I didn't cover the unforeseen. Flat rate pricing, as Bryce was saying, has been the best thing for us. And that's an automation process as well, because your guys, you've got it built into your system. They go to the job. They're not calling me saying, hey, what do I charge to do this? What do I charge to? You charge this, and explain to them this doesn't cover the unforeseen. If we get in there and it's pre-war plumbing, we don't know what's in the walls. We don't know that something could change in a second. But explain to them, hey, this is what it's going to cost if it's standard procedure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
The other thing I want to add in there too, with what you were saying, Tyler, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that'll build the confidence in your pricing too, doing hard calculations on it, and you can sell confidently. I think it's important to mention that if you're thinking about it as how can I hide the costs in there, or how can I hide the price in here, that will come out without you communicating anything at all. People are going to be highly sensitive to that kind of thinking and thought process, and they'll be on their guard against stuff like that as well. when you show people the actual costs and have your overhead percentage in there openly and your profit percentage in there, we found consistently that that actually still sells well. People are buying more with confidence in that way. That is, take this with a grain of salt. It's not on exactly everything that you're talking about, but yeah, don't totally discount the idea that if I just show openly what my costs are, people are going to fight that, because the problem people have and why they negotiate so much is because they don't know how much is in there. So they're thinking, if I just agitate enough, if I ask for enough, there could be more. And if you very easily get rid of, $5,000 on the project, that actually doesn't help you. If someone's wanting to negotiate and they say, hey, is there anything you can do on price? And you just lop off a huge chunk right there, that undermines your credibility unless you're able to specifically show, here's exactly where that comes from.
Yes.
So
And
just
know
like
your-
additional minor notes there.
and know your numbers because when you get that difficult client that may be a very high end client, that they're analytical and they want you people. I have friends that are like, oh, you pay this to do the job, or it's $0 not to do the job. But I don't look at it that way, because if my customer wants comfort in knowing why does it cost this much, in a couple minutes I can tell them this is what it costs to run my business. This is where we're at on the front side before we even start working in this cost. And then they're able to know, okay, so I'm paying a little bit more because this guy has skilled technicians that he pays very well. He offers them things that cost money on this labor rate, and you're able to go through there and explain to them in a manner that gives them comfort. And I was the guy that said, I can do it for this, or I can leave for nothing right now in the beginning. And then I found that a lot of my high-end customers and commercial clients would want some form of price breakdown for their systems, or their higher ups, the powers that be, would want to see something, and being able to do that gives them comfort.
Yeah.
Another edge of kind of a weird sales tactic that we developed, and being able to explain that in a layman's manner.
Well, and that's something that we could spend a whole nother group call on, and probably have spent many, is that without communicating value, the only thing that people care about is price. And so sometimes when we go to like increase our prices or add overhead costs, or when we're already scared of, oh, well, Tim, Nicole, you're telling me, that I shouldn't just be working to work, that revenue is not going to fix my problems. I got to make sure I profit. But what if I start losing jobs because now I'm pricing higher? Well, it's an opportunity to lean into our sales process, and it's an opportunity to build value. Why should you want my guys, who might get paid a little bit more, to be on your job compared to the chuck in a truck up the street who doesn't have a license or the proper training? And we obviously are going to say it in a more sugar-coaty way than what I just communicated, and that's something that we can work with your coach, of how to present that and how to get your guys to present it. And it's not about being a used car salesman. It's just about communicating the value. Because if you don't communicate it, your customer doesn't know it. They don't know it by default. And so we have to take that moment. So all of it kind of goes into layers. If we want to charge a premium price, you have to have a premium online reputation, a premium sales process. And so that's why with your coach, there's kind of a pathway that we take you down that covers all of those things, and in due time. I think it might be your first week here, Tyler. So I know it might feel like, oh my gosh, this is so much. And it is, but it's at 1 or 2% every week. It all just builds upon each other. So don't feel like you need to do everything at once.
And speaking on value, you never change your price. You subtract value, if that makes sense. Like the good, better, best thing. People that negotiate with us, we typically can give them a lesser product for cheaper to fit their budget. We offer, as a standard, a mid-grade product across the board, but we can deduct value rather than negotiate price, because I found that when we negotiate price, I had a few weird interactions with people where I would come off the price pretty quick just to sell the job. And then they had questions as far as, okay, so you were able to move that fast. You had this number pumped up on me to begin with. So rather than do that, now we'll take away value. Like we go change a toilet. Okay, American Standard Cadet. Now you're getting the $99 box toilet, no supply line, no new stop, no new discussion that you would get with the mid-grade product. So, and learn that to take, I don't know how much that's more applicable to service. Don't know how much of that you do, but that's been a game changer for us to sell more jobs as far as deducting value rather than going in and us hurting ourselves by taking money off the top on the same product.
Right. Preach. You know, we don't lower price, we change the scope.
Mhm.
And being able to do that on the job, that's why we have to present estimates in person, because if you're not presenting them in person, you can't change the scope of them if the price isn't good. And so that's exactly right. We aren't just going to drop the price to win the job. We can change the scope of work to better fit their budget. Just in case anybody missed it, we did put a document in the chat here while Tim was talking about understanding what overhead is. I find that document to be pretty helpful when understanding your P&L and just knowing how to find that overhead percentage. If anybody is needing more help with that, just get with your coach. We would be more than happy to walk you through and find that percentage for you and show you how we did it. Tyler, I see that you're saying you're having a hard time loading the doc. I'll see if your coach can make a copy of it and send it to you. I don't know if that will solve that problem or if it might just be an internet issue. Maybe when you're not on this group call, your internet might be a little bit better.
Well, it's asking for permission to log in from my office admin and not my email. So I don't know why it went to her email instead of mine.
Oh,
Well.
maybe
I
try
can't
opening
log
it
stuff.
maybe try opening it in an incognito tab, and then it's not going to try to automatically log you into someone's email.
Well, she's on this call too, so I mean, she can
get into it.
get it and save it, and then I'll look at it.
Okay.
I went ahead and made a copy and shared it to your email, so you should be able to open it through that link as well.
All right, good enough. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Tim, thank you for being here. Glad you got to meet all these clients that you hear
That's
only
great.
good things about. Wonderful things. We loved having you here. We're going to close out this group call the same way we do every single one, which is a big 3, 2, 1 growth. If I could get everybody to unmute. 3, 2, 1 growth.
Whoa.
Bye, guys. Have a great week.